Hi, everyone. I'm Eliza Sherman. I'm the CEO of Ellementa, and this is actually a women's wellness webinar. I always talk about how we haven't been using a whole lot of slides. We always do when we have experts who are particularly medical or scientific, who have lots of information to impart in a very brief amount of time. We'll use slides, but a lot of these sessions have been conversations. So I'm always saying, it's not exactly a webinar, but this one is. So I'm excited to bring back Dr. Bridget Williams. Hi, Dr. Bridget Williams.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to see you again. And we've got a super topic, a really interesting topic. We had a lot of interest in this one. I think people are still extremely curious about cannabis and all the different compounds within it. What do they do? How do they make me feel? What are they good for? So we're going to really dive into that. So right now, we're going to flip over to our webinar mode. I'm going to share my screen and bring up the slides so we can just dive right into it. We're going to turn off our video at the moment. We'll turn it back on later. So you will be hearing our voices. And I will bring up the slides. And Dr. Williams, can you see those slides?
Absolutely.
Yay! Okay, so let's get going. Welcome again, everyone. Our topic today is Delta-8-THC and other surprising minor cannabinoids. Our goal today, and as with all of our sessions, is to empower you with better information, in this case, about cannabis for health and wellness, and also to introduce you to the Ellementa women's wellness community in case you're brand new to our sessions. We have been holding Ellementa events for the last several years in person, but clearly since March, we have not been doing so. But we have at least 475 events under our belt where women met with other women in person talking about cannabis and CBD for health and wellness. Now we're doing everything on Zoom, including guided meditations, author chats, video watch parties, and wellness discussions, as well as these webinars. Another thing that we do at Ellementa is we help you find the right products by reviewing products for you. Yes, we have cannabis testers. I'm one of the CBD testers. We really do try these products. It's a little bit easier with cannabis because the effects are much more immediate. It's a little bit more challenging to review a CBD product because it takes some time. But we try to let you know what the experience is like, and then everything from the packaging to the instructions to the ingredients, even to the taste. So if you're looking for information about products and even discounts on products that do not have THC, we can provide that for you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm the co-author of Cannabis and CBD for Health and Wellness, a book that I wrote with Dr. Junella Chin. And you can find out more about it at ellementa.com/cannabisbook. And we have a giveaway. Yay! Thanks to Dr. Williams, we have a giveaway from Green Harvest Health, her company. And you know what? I'm going to turn it over to you, and you could talk about your gummies and then talk a little bit about yourself and your background. Take
Absolutely.
it away.
So we're really excited to have finally launched our full spectrum CBD with CBG gummies. I believe the last time we were, that I met with you, Eliza, that we were in the process of creating it. And I'm very particular about what we do with our cultivators and processors. And so we were able to make a 25 milligram gummy that has CBD with CBG in it. So it's great for sleep and anxiety, and actually we'll be talking about CBG a little bit more today, but great for that inflammation as well. And they're easy to cut in half if you want a little bit less, or to double it up if you need a little bit more. So, and they taste amazing, which keep that in mind, because as we were doing more and more taste testing and kind of getting the formula right, I kind of forgot it had CBD in it. And I ate about 3 of them and I was asleep for a couple hours. So, it still is medicinal, and keep that in mind.
Oh, good point. And I did mention taste too when I talk about reviews, because so much of the product that's out there, if you're
Hmm.
not used to the flavor of cannabis, for example, it can be overpowering and overwhelming, and it's not necessarily something that everyone's used to. And then on the CBD front, it can be very chemically, and that could be a bit off-putting. So taste
Hmm.
seems like a weird thing to review about, but when you're taking medicines, that is a consideration, especially if you're taking something supplementally on a daily basis. So that it's good that yours tastes good, because
Yeah,
it's very hard to have to find a good tasting CBD gummy.
yeah,
So give
absolutely.
us a little bit more of your background.
So, again, my name is Dr. Bridget Williams. I am originally a family physician for nearly 20 years with the Cleveland Clinic. And I was motivated to get more into the cannabis space by patients that were frustrated with, for every condition, there's a pill. And so, over a period of time, I decided to become a cannabis educator as well as a life coach. And we opened up our own offices, Green Harvest Health, in Columbus and in Cleveland, Ohio. And so we're the only medical cannabis and coaching office in Ohio, and probably beyond that as well. I'm also a teacher at the Cleveland School of Cannabis, and contribute as a consultant and write curriculum for them as well. So,
Amazing. And what's really interesting, excuse me, to me is you don't hear a whole lot about what's happening in the Midwest, unless maybe you're
mhm,
talking about Illinois and Chicago.
mhm,
But to hear what's going on in Ohio is quite interesting. And just to hear about things other than, the big cities and the big coasts.
mhm.
So
Yes,
that's really, I think, helpful for people to know what's happening in the Midwest,
yes.
uh, that there is a clinic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we're a newer state as far as
Mhm.
medical cannabis. We were approved in 2016, but things didn't really get up and running until 2018, 2019. So
Mhm.
we're very new, and so it's a wild west, even though we're in the Midwest a little bit here. And so so we're still creating our program and defining it and growing.
Got it. Well, it's the same thing up here in Alaska. Really, things started to legalize around 2016, and um, the legal market, it takes about 2 to 3 years for people to get licensed and just to go through the whole process to opening up
Hmm.
their businesses. So that sounds pretty typical. I want to remind everyone that you can type questions in if you are here live on Zoom. You can type questions into the chat area. With slides, I'm not able to see them, so we won't get to your questions until a little bit later in the program. But just so everybody knows what we are aware that you might be typing in some questions, and we'll get to them after the main portion of this webinar. All right, we're going to jump in. I like to give a quick overview about the endocannabinoid system and what's in cannabis, that, some of these things we're going to be talking about today. So here's my little Reader's Digest version of the endocannabinoid system. We all know about various systems in our body: digestive system, nervous system, endocrine system, immune system, reproductive system, respiratory. If you think about all of these, we learned about them in school, but there is a system that lays over all the other systems and helps to regulate those systems, almost like an air traffic controller, if you will, turning things on, turning things off, to help bring your systems into balance. It's called the endocannabinoid system. And in the late 80s and early 90s, scientists were researching the effects of the molecules in the cannabis plant with the human body, or with the mammal body and brain, because they weren't testing on humans, they were testing on rats and pigs. And they discovered the system of receptors, as well as proteins and enzymes, all interacting like this network, sending these other kinds of signals and creating these various effects. So, this endocannabinoid system is this network of the receptors and other kinds of chemicals in the body that are interacting, binding, or reacting in ways to, hopefully, if your endocannabinoid system is healthy, regulate different systems in your body. Anything you wanted to add, Dr. Williams, to that?
Well, at the end of the day, the endocannabinoid system is all about balance. And what is so amazing is not that just what it does in itself, but how well, like you stated, how well it interacts with our other systems. Without that, that's where the real balance comes from. And there's so much more to come with this, right? As far as research and what we're going to be experiencing and learning about, hopefully in the next several years and beyond, how key the endocannabinoid system is to our health.
Right. I've been reading how researchers are talking about a deficiency or an imbalance in the endocannabinoid system can create an imbalance in all other systems and could be the root of a lot of the disease that we have.
Absolutely.
So it's an important system that has been more recently discovered. And if you talk about the way that cannabis interacts with our system, what we really are looking at is how chemical compounds such as cannabinoids, or really technically in the plant, it's called a phytocannabinoid, interacts with our endocannabinoid system. Now, we as humans, as mammals, we produce naturally some cannabinoid-like substances. One of them is called anandamide, the bliss molecule, and it's interacting with this endocannabinoid system as well. So this is a reason why the cannabis plant seems so potent and effective in terms of creating effects within our bodies. So this is how it becomes medicine. There are chemical compounds in the plant that interact really well with our bodies and our brains through this system, cannabinoids being some of them. And so THC, CBD, CBN, we're going to be talking about THCV, CBG, those are cannabinoids. And the second chemical compound that is very, very prevalent in cannabis, as well as in other plants and foods, terpenes. It helps determine smell and taste and color in plants, fruits, and vegetables. So you are probably consuming or smelling terpenes, particularly like if you're into aromatherapy. Well, cannabis is so rich in terpenes, and those terpenes correspond also with different effects. And the terpenes and the cannabinoids, they kind of work together to produce even different effects. So do you want to throw in a couple of comments about
I would tell you that.
terpenes?
Yeah, terpenes, definitely teaching. This is always my favorite part. First of all, I always bring in little live, I bring in mango and lemons and, we really kind of get into this. But I love the fact that some people come to this information with a great amount of knowledge about essential oils. And not a lot of information about cannabis or terpenes. And then others kind of learn more about essential oils because of terpenes themselves. And they're not exactly the same. Some essential oils have terpenes in it, and then some are more chemically based. But the fact that you can get a medicinal effect from these incredibly fragrant aspects of fruits and plants and vegetables is just, it's amazing that what a key part this plays into cannabinoid medicine.
Yeah, and what I love to do too, when I'm explaining, people are like, "Why is cannabis? Why does it do so many different things?" Well, the abundance of cannabinoids, each one with its own sort of way of interacting with the body, and the abundance of terpenes. I also like to just explain. Lavender, which everyone seems to be familiar with and knows can be relaxing, has linalool, and so does cannabis. And citrus fruit has limonene, and so does cannabis. It's just, it's like a light bulb going off in your head when you realize how abundant this plant is with the kinds of chemical compounds that are found in so many other things that we know about. It just helps demystify and also changes your perception of cannabis. It's much more of a medicinal herbal plant.
Yes, absolutely.
So now we're going to get into the meat of this. The rest of this is yours. Just let me know when you want me to turn the slides.
Absolutely. Well, the focus of cannabis has been on THC throughout history. It delivers that magical euphoria. It offers these medicinal benefits. But CBD was discovered in the 1940s, with research really beginning in the 1960s, and a whole new way of looking at cannabis began. The medicinal benefits go way beyond the relaxation of a high you may feel, but in something much more complex. CBD feels like balance. CBD and the discovery of the endocannabinoid system delivers the balance that has led to medicinal benefits for pain, anxiety, seizures, and beyond. It's so hard to describe what balance feels like or what does normal feel like. But that's really the information that I hear from a lot of my patients, that they can't really put their finger on it sometimes, why they feel different. But at the end of the day, it's what CBD does. It brings balance back to your body.
Well, I do want to say too, since I am the CBD tester and I've tried a variety of products, and not all CBD products are alike, that when I am on a regular non-therapeutic dose, I guess is what you would call it, like I would take between 20 and 30 milligrams of CBD on a daily basis, I just seem more able to cope with stress. So it's a non-specific thing, but the kinds of events that could send my heart racing or send that rush of adrenaline or cortisol through my body that gives me this horrible anxious feeling, it's not there. It's not happening as much. It seems my tolerance level for stress becomes much greater, and my ability to remain calm also much greater. So
absolutely. And really, what is it doing? It's really making your natural system just function a little bit better. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I do see that, but it's not like you take a puff of a joint and you're super high. It's not that. It's not immediate at all.
No, not at all. And so THC and CBD do not do all of these things alone, though. We have learned that THC and CBD share their greatest benefits when they work with the minor cannabinoids, along with the terpenes and flavonoids, to create a synergistic effect that's called entourage, or called ensemble effect, because they all come together and make this synergistic, heightened benefit for our bodies. The active components of cannabis work better together than they ever do apart. So you can see here with the diagram that it's not, we spend so much time focusing on one neurotransmitter or another, one cannabinoid or another, but at the end of the day, it's all of them really coming together that gives you the greatest benefit.
Which also leads to that quick point that full spectrum or broad spectrum products will always, or can't make these definitive statements, should be more therapeutic than an isolated form because of that, like, as you say, synergistic quality of them working together and, in a sense, making each other work better because of how they work together. But I also caution some places you cannot get full spectrum or broad spectrum. And so don't think that isolated wouldn't work as well. But every doctor I've spoken to, I mean, is that your sense that?
Absolutely. I mean, we, in our product line, I do prefer full spectrum because of what we've discussed, but we have isolate options as well. Because for some people, they're not really allowed to have any THC, whether it's a work issue or a personal issue. And also for some, they're a little hesitant. And so we do have an isolate. People do find it to be very effective, but you can also enhance that isolate with terpenes. And so that's one way that we've incorporated our isolate products, by looking at some of the terpenes and adding in that effect, so that you're getting just the CBD, but you're getting a little bit more with it as well.
Excellent. Good point. All right.
So here we have cannabinoids are in their acid form when they're raw. So this kind of gives you a sense of how we get to all these other cannabinoids. So that's the THCA, CBDA, and CBCA. And when they're dried or heated, they convert into the more active forms that you're familiar with, THC, CBD, CBC, CBG. When they age or they're exposed to air, light, and heat, they convert CBN, Delta-8-THC, and others. And there are also variants, so the THCV. So everything does not start in its active form, but basically they have to be altered in one way, whether it's heat or drying or what have you, to become in a more activated form that we find useful. But let me also say that even in the acid form, for instance, CBDA is a very active neurotransmitter or cannabinoid that we look to use with particularly breast cancer patients. So okay. Even with the raw form, it has great medicinal effects. A lot of people will juice cannabis leaves and cannabis flower. I personally have never done that. I don't have a juicer, but some people choose to use that to get some medicinal effects as well. And they're basically using it in the raw form.
Right. And I've heard that juicing cannabis, first of all, the acid form of THC will not be mind altering. It's not intoxicating. And it's also apparently rich in your omegas as well. So
absolutely.
Just an all around fantastic healthy plant.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's break down some of these minor cannabinoids. And by minor, I mean, why do they call them minor? Are they just not as prevalent, or are they somewhere down the totem pole? What does minor?
Yes, all of the above. So part of it has to do with the actual concentration that you will find them in, whether it's hemp or marijuana cannabis plants. Also, to be honest, at this point, it's what we understand about them as well, right? So CBD and THC are definitely the ones that are most prevalent, are their higher concentrations. But I think as we learn more about some of these other cannabinoids, we'll see greater extractions of them, and we'll make better use of it as well. So starting with CBG, and it honestly kind of starts from the beginning almost. Cannabidiol is the third most prevalent cannabinoid and the most trending cannabinoid at this time. It is the precursor cannabinoid for CBD, THC, and CBC. It is not psychoactive or mind altering and provides enhanced help with inflammation, pain, nausea, and works to slow the proliferation of cancer cells. CBG is recommended for patients that have glaucoma, irritable bowel syndrome, and inflammatory bowel disease, as well as cancer patients. Research has found that it inhibits the growth of colorectal cancer cells in mice and thereby slows the colon cancer growth. CBG inhibits tumors and chemically induced colon carcinogens, and therefore demonstrating a very exciting possibility for colorectal cancer treatment. It has antibiotic properties, as well as to help MRSA or staph infections. It's also a bone stimulant and can lower blood pressure as well. Other research has found it is beneficial still for sleep and anxiety, which we're familiar with that with CBD. And CBG shows a lot of promise, but it does require, obviously, much more research at this time.
Well, it seems like with glaucoma, IBS, et cetera, those are very inflammatory conditions. So it must be very, very good on inflammation. And combining it with CBD, which also has such strong anti-inflammatory properties, that's so interesting that your gummies have both of them. I don't recall having seen that combination yet prior to seeing yours. So that's kind of interesting. So that should have some additional anti-inflammatory effect.
Absolutely. And so what I suspect, and this is kind of just my opinion, but as we learn more and more about the minor cannabinoids, I feel that we will be going to the dispensary or to your CBD store, and we'll be picking cannabinoid products off the shelf, much like we get vitamin B6 and B12. And we pick out the vitamin combinations that we feel will be helpful for us. I feel that the more we learn about these cannabinoids, we're really going to be in that position where we're picking the products based on the cannabinoids that are in it to help with the conditions that we have.
Well, I think what you're pointing out is something that's already happening in the more mature markets, Colorado and California, because when I was on book tour and I was going to various dispensaries in California, for example, there are already companies that are making CBN forward products, THCV forward products. We'll talk about THCV in a moment, and I'll sort of elaborate a little bit on the products that I was seeing very specifically around THCV. So since I haven't been to California for a while, I haven't seen the CBG products, but in San Francisco, very specifically, I remember there's a company that has, I think they're called Level, Level, that has I think they even have a Delta-8 THC product.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're sublingual, I believe sublingual tablets that you can just dissolve under your tongue. So you're right on. It's something that is happening in the more mature markets.
Absolutely. CBG seems to be a big buzz around here, where some of the other ones, you don't see as many products available. But like I said, it's a growing market, and the more we learn, the more things will be available to us.
Yeah, very interesting. All right. And next on to THC.
There we go.
All right.
So many people utilize cannabis products for numerous medicinal and recreational effects, but this also includes weight loss. And this has come up quite often in my office, I have to say. The THCV, or tetrahydrocannabivarin, is found mainly in sativa plants, and some of its medicinal properties are regulating blood sugars, stimulating bone growth, decreasing panic attacks, and improving motor control in Alzheimer's patients. During the stress of COVID-19, a lot of us could use a stress reliever, as well as a little help getting rid of the quarantine 15, which many of my patients felt like when they went home and weren't working, that they were going to exercise and do things and be really active. And they all came back saying, I don't know what happened. So,
but isn't a lot of this weight gain potentially not just not moving around a lot, but stress related?
Absolutely. Both of them together. High cortisol levels. I mean, we've experienced a stress that no one in our generation has ever had. And so to be able to navigate that, we all respond differently, but a lot of support for restaurants can add up a a little bit. So
interesting. And okay. So the other thing also I wanted to mention, I think you're going to get to it next, but I was excited about this when I first learned about it, how THC we know can increase your appetite. And so that's one of the reasons why cancer patients who are undergoing chemo and they lose their appetite, it could be very, very helpful to them. Plus, if you're just doing it recreationally, the idea of having the munchies and eating a lot, but THCV does the opposite. So take it away again. I found that so fascinating.
It is. So THCV curbs your appetite and helps manage cravings. So it also boosts your metabolism, improving energy and helping burn more calories with daily exercise. Nothing really works in a bubble, right? And so in low doses, THCV acts as an antagonist for the CB1 receptor, which means you won't experience a high but when you increase the dose, the THCV switches behavior and acts more of a CB1 agonist and creates a little bit of a minor psychoactive or high effect. The more recent research is actually disputing some of that a little bit, but either way, as far as how it helps with your blood sugars or your metabolism, that's kind of tried and true. And there are a number of strains of cannabis that tend to be a little bit higher in THCV that can make it more accessible to you.
Do you happen to know the names of any strains?
Well, I'll tell you, the one that is available in our area is Durban Poison.
Okay. Yep.
But in other areas, Doug's Varin was really the first
Yes.
time I was introduced to it. Malawi Gold and Black Beauty.
So Doug's Varin is the one that I was going to mention. And there was
Mhm.
a company, I think their name was the American Cannabinoid Company. I'm not sure if they're still around, but they were in California.
Mhm.
And they very specifically were harvesting Doug's Varin and
Mhm.
producing THCV forward products, including vape
Yes.
pens.
Yes.
And that's where I was introduced to THCV. I'm not really looking for appetite suppressant, but I
Mhm.
am looking for more of balance so that cortisol isn't attacking my
Yes.
middle section. Because take menopause, which everything is sort of sitting in the middle of your
Mhm.
body, your belly, and then add in the cortisol and the stress levels. And so I definitely have the quarantine 10. When you said quarantine 15, I started thinking, oh no, not another. But so I don't step on a scale
Mhm.
as often. I don't use that to gauge my health and well-being. I usually just go by fit of my
Mhm.
clothing, and I'm not going to be able to afford to buy a whole new set of jeans,
Exactly.
for example. So the minute I can't button that top button, I know I'm sort of in
Yeah.
that danger zone.
The one thing I want to say about THCV, though, is that it does boil at a higher temperature.
Hmm.
And so it's boiling, we usually sit in that, 311, if you're using a vaporizer, right?
Mm-hmm.
311 to about 350 range
Okay.
when we were talking about using a vaporizer. And uh, THCV is more like 420, 430
Oh
almost.
wow. Okay.
Fahrenheit. So, and it actually, you have to bypass at around 400, you actually start to release benzene, which is a mild toxin. So
Oh.
it is one of those things that if you can get it concentrated a little bit into a vape pen, all the better.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
it does. So if you're just staying within that 311, 350 range, you're probably not going to get a lot of that THCV.
Hmm. Very interesting. And so that is if you are vaping flower, vaporizing the
Yes.
flower. So if
Yes.
you then get a THCV concentrate, or like these pens I was talking about, these vape
Yes.
pens that are really THCV extracts,
Hmm.
concentrated extracts, then you're bypassing that issue. That
Yes.
that if you were vaping flower. Okay, good to know. I
Yes.
think that's
Yeah.
really a good practical piece of information to know. All right, ready to move on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
there we go.
So I'm really excited about the Delta-8-THC. I'll be quite honest. It's on every single little chart that I use with patients and with my students in my class. And I just don't think I ever paid that much attention to it until one of my students brought it to my attention. He basically says, "Oh yeah, you can buy this." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he shows me what he bought, this Delta-8 THC vape. And I was like, "Gee, I'm afraid you're going to go to jail. Where did you where did you buy that?" And we started talking about it. And in our area in Ohio, this is very new, right? Because our hemp production is barely off the ground now, and Delta 8 THC is really based on being extracted from hemp, and it just hasn't really gotten out into mainstream conversation yet. So I was very excited to learn about it and to know that my student wasn't going to jail.
Wow.
Because basically, Delta 8 is the loophole in the Farm Bill. We are all familiar with Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, the THC, and it is the active form of THC in which we inhale or use sublingually. However, Delta-8 THC is chemically different from Delta-9. It has a mild mind-altering effect, but it is in general more mild and less likely to produce anxiety that some people that are new to cannabis might get if they have too much THC. So it's a very mild effect, but still effective for patients. If it is the degraded form of Delta-9 THC. So as it breaks down, this is where the Delta-8 is coming from, and it is able to bind to CB1 and CB2 receptors, but is actually more stable than the Delta-9 THC. So it has a better medicinal effect. It has been found to be an anti-inflammatory, analgesic, so great for pain, reduces anxiety. It is anti-nausea, and it is an appetite stimulant. So because the Farm Bill stated that all hemp derivatives are legal, including Delta-9 THC, as long as it's below 0.3%, Delta-8 THC can be sold outside of dispensaries for common use. So again, more research needs to be done, but typically right now you're finding them more in smoke shops more than CBD stores. I called some of the people I'm familiar with that own CBD in kind of the more educational based CBD stores, and they're looking at it, they're thinking about it, but they're not making that purchase yet. And I called one of my processor friends, and he says he has it in house and he's afraid to touch it. So I think it's interesting. I'm kind of curious what the rest of the country is doing with this right now and how quickly it may become illegal. But to be honest, it's very mild. So I don't know if it will ever cause much of a fuss, to be honest.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen it. So I'm up in Alaska, and we still have a fairly, I guess, immature market where people aren't extracting all these different or growing for all these different minor cannabinoids right now. Products are still quite limited. There is still a great focus on THC with a big explosion now of people asking for CBD, but they're bringing the CBD products mostly from outside of Alaska. So I'm not seeing any, or I haven't seen any Delta-8 THC things around here. I was just looking at the Level website, Level, the sublingual tabs to see what they've got, because I could have sworn that they had something. Yeah, it's a little hard to tell because they call it Energize, and then you have to kind of go in and figure out what all is in there.
What does that mean?
Yeah. But I do know, like I said, in much more mature markets, they are playing around with a lot more of the minor cannabinoids. So we're going to move it quickly into some questions, but I may also throw out a few other minor cannabinoids and just kind of get a quick sense of what they might be good for. But
absolutely.
Just as a quick wrap up, a few things to think about. And I'll do this wrap up, and then if you have some additional points that you want to wrap up, we'll open it up to questions, bring our video back on, and then round out the conversation with mentioning a few other minor cannabinoids. But one thing that you really need to remember is to look for the content. So if you are into flower and you're looking at strains or cultivars, you want to ask for the test results and see what kind of makeup, what is it, how much of a concentration of not just THC or CBD, but other minor cannabinoids are in there. And once you understand how they work, then you'll begin to understand potentially what the effects will be. And let's emphasize at this moment, every body is different. Literally every body and brain is different. So what could be stimulating to one person could be sedating to someone else. And then the concept of just looking beyond THC and CBD, I think, is a good one. You might be hampered by what is available in your market, but understand it's not just about THC and CBD. I think that is a good thing to keep in mind as the markets continue to mature and legalization continues to spread across the country. Just to understand that there's way more to cannabis than THC and CBD.
Absolutely.
Anything you'd like to add?
No, I completely agree with you that the more time that goes by and the more research that we have available, I'm excited to see how this honestly becomes more and more mainstream, and that people look beyond what they've assumed about cannabis and are actually really able to dig into the medicinal aspects of this.
Yep, I agree. Let's go into questions. Reminder that we do have a giveaway, so will be picking a random winner from the attendees. But I'm going to escape out of here. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and turn on my video. 3 steps.
There we go.
We're back. Hey, everybody. We are back. Nice to see everyone now. I'm just going to be scrolling down really quickly to see. There was a question about your gummies, which we are going to give away. Are they sweetened with sugar?
They are, but let me tell you why. That we were looking to have a general gummy that had a high CBD content that most of our patients can use. Our next step is actually, because I've had a number of diabetic patients, and this comes up at the Cleveland School of Cannabis with their cooking class and all the time. And so our next step is actually I'm saying it out loud because when I say it to you, Eliza, it actually happens.
Eliza, by the way, it's Eliza.
Eliza, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. That it actually, I actually do it, right?
Yeah.
So
it's called accountability. It's sort of like putting it out into the universe, and therefore it must be done.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are working on a women's line of products, and one of those is going to be a sugar-free gummy, simply because I have so many patients that are diabetics, and I want to kind of make sure that we take that into consideration as well.
Good to know. Good to know. So I wanted to remind everyone who is here live with us right now on Zoom, welcome. I couldn't see you before because I had the slides up. Feel free to type in any questions that you have. Can you toss out a few other minor cannabinoids and that
absolutely. So
you're paying attention to or thinking about?
Sure, absolutely. So CBN, I think we mentioned it very quickly, is really great. Well, CBN is great because basically, again, it's degrading THC, but it's incredible for sleep. So when we're looking at products that are going to help patients sleep better, we want to make sure that either that full spectrum, or if you're able to isolate that CBN and get a higher concentration of it, that CBN is really the best option for you.
And one thing to keep in mind that I have read about CBN is too much of it could be the cause of that paranoia feeling that we feel.
Yes, it is.
So if anybody was into flour and don't store it properly and it's getting a lot of light or a lot of air, degrading even further, that is the reason why smoking so old pot can make you very, very sleepy or give you that paranoid feeling.
Absolutely. So you always see these sitcoms where they find some hidden flower in a couch or in a box someplace. That is not a good idea, number one, right? And so overall, though, because it is degrading and what can happen to your flower when it's not well taken care of and under the right pressure as far as humidity, it's not a good idea to kind of pull out that really old product and try to utilize it.
Okay, but wait a minute. Is it dangerous? Because possibly there may have been somebody that I know who found a joint that's probably about a year old, but it hasn't been smoked. I mean, is it dangerous, or is it just not going to necessarily give you'll fall asleep? Or
okay, so both of those. The danger is the possible mold. Depending on how it's been, where it's been, has it gotten moist at all? You know, how was it dried in the first place? My concern is really the mold that it might be producing. So that's kind of the CBN part. Like you said, you might get a little bit more sleepy, and hopefully you don't get that paranoid feeling.
Right.
But it's the mold that bothers me.
That is a really good point. I'm glad I asked the question.
Yeah.
For a friend.
For a friend, absolutely.
All right. So any other one that comes to mind?
Well, kind of the opposite of that is CBC, which is actually a much more fresh and younger form of, as far as found in more younger plants, I guess is what I should say. It's found in younger plants versus CBN, which is found in older plants, right? And so CBN is great, potentially antibiotic or antifungal properties are involved in it, anti-inflammatory, pain, possibly even antidepressant effects as well.
Oh.
So where CBC is, and it's also one of the first byproducts of CBG, right?
Okay.
But where CBC is from a younger plant, and CBN is from an older plant. So
older aged, not properly stored plant material.
So.
All right. So I wanted to remind everybody, I'm going to hold up my book now in real life. And you had a copy of it.
I'll do the same. I'll do that.
Oh, look at that. I love that. Oh my God. I have to say that a lot of the things we talked about are also mentioned in the book. We have a whole chapter on cannabinoids, a whole chapter on terpenes, and then there's patient case studies as well that talk about various combinations and dosing, which I think is a major question often that we get is, how much, and it's not a single answer. There's not one way to answer that question. Absolutely. How do you explain to somebody who's a patient how they go about dosing any cannabis or CBD product? Right.
So my fast, quick answer is start low and then slowly increase your dosage over time, right? And I usually recommend, if you're really searching, then stay on that same dose for about 3 to 4 days even. Just get a really good feel for it before you push yourself up to a higher dose. There are a lot of recommendations out there, and some conditions are definitely on the higher end of dosing where other ones are on the lower. But in general, I tend to, you want to use the least amount necessary for the best therapeutic effect. Yeah. And so whether that's THC or CBD products or what have you, that's the best way to go.
Okay, that sounds good. So now if you could hold up the gummies, I have already randomly picked a winner. Are they little bears or what are they shaped?
They are little bears, yeah.
So I think in some states, they're not allowed to be shaped like bears.
THC products are not allowed to be shaped like that.
Got it. Okay.
Well, at least in Ohio. That's
okay. I think you're probably right. You're probably right. And then remind us again how much CBD and how much CBG is in each gummy?
Right. So the products are, the CBD is it's 750 milligrams in the bottle. They're 30 in the bottle, 30 gummies. And so each one is 25 milligrams.
Got it.
And the dosage of the CBG is actually about, I believe it's like 3 or 4%. So basically based on how it adds up, basically.
Okay. Got it. All right. So our winner of the gummies is Maritza. This has been really interesting, and I'm so glad to hear more about some of these minor cannabinoids that I just did not have enough information about. I knew, I guess, the most about THCV because of those Doug Barron's related products, derived products that I was mentioning before. But the idea of the Delta-8-THC kind of skating under this little loophole, I find fascinating, and I'm just so surprised that nobody else is producing, although, like you said, somebody could close that loophole, and then if anyone's devoted a lot of resources to making those products, it could be an issue. But while it's still available, I think that sounds very interesting. So thanks again, Dr. Bridget Williams, for being here.
Absolutely. I appreciate it so much. It's great to be back.
All right. Well, we'll talk to everyone soon. We will see you online. Bye, everybody.